Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Hormones on the Blink podcast.
Today we have got the amazing Victoria Hardy, aka GingeUnhinged. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us. It's amazing to have you on the podcast. We know who you are, but tell the listeners a little bit about you.
So thank you for having me. I am a content creator, I'm now an author, and I talk mainly around menstrual health and menopause and mental health as well, bringing those three things together. Hopefully do it with a bit of humour and laughs too, and just really trying to create the message that these things affect all women of all different ages. So yeah, that's me.
Love that, don't you?
Yeah, really important. The all ages part.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So before we kind of get stuck in, do you want to tell us a bit about your experience, your journey, how you got to be talking about early menopause, what got you here?
Yeah, sure. So my journey, I suppose, starts with, let me ask you a question, if I'm allowed.
Go for
it. So did you learn about menopause when you were at school?
No.
Absolutely not.
No, we did not.
Okay, cool. So I just want to put that out there just before we get any further and we get to the point where I talk about my dry vagina. Because it's really important, because we didn't know, right? So no judgment. So yeah, I guess picture this. I am just before my 13th birthday. It was 1995. Your parents didn't care where you were at that point, and I was 9 hours away from home with my brother in Alton Towers when I started my period. And it felt like the world had fallen out. It was, to be gruesome straight away, that's kind of how it felt. It was excruciatingly painful. I really didn't know what was happening. And that was the first time I really felt shame about my body and what it did. Before that, I was kind of, quite confident in myself. I did gymnastics, and quite sporty. And I just thought, what is going on? What is happening to my body? And from that point on, I just kind of turned into this person that lived in the bathroom. I was going from toilet floor to toilet to living in the bath, shriveled up like a prune in pain.
No way.
I'd say I'd turned blue, but I've got ginger skin, so, pretty blue anyway. But I just really just spent a lot of time hiding out of school. And my first experience with going into hospital was at the age of 15. I had the first of 12 ruptured cysts. And again, all I kind of had from that point was periods are usually painful, go on the contraceptive pill continuously. And I was pretty much a child at that point. I was rushed into hospital. All of the junior doctors, looking where they shouldn't be looking. And they said to me, well, you have these cysts growing. They had questioned me whether I had potentially the possibility of an ectopic pregnancy, and I was like, absolutely not. And I really just felt like there was something not right. And I kind of said to them, is there infections going on? So they did a smear test. That was the first of over 30 smear tests that I would have.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember everyone.
Gosh.
And they picked up that I had, alongside these cysts, that I also had the start of my cells were starting to change in cervical cancer. So at 16 and 17, I had treatment for that. And all of the time, I would be back and forth in pain with the hospital, and these cysts would rupture, and I would have hugely painful periods, and the bleeding wouldn't stop. And it wasn't until I was 18 that I eventually, after a few laparoscopies, got diagnosed with, that thing that no one can say, endometriosis, and adenomyosis as well. And I was like, no one had really told me about that either. So we'd learnt about periods at school, but not really the sideline issues that can come with periods. So I think at that point I was starting to think, okay, right, I just need to feel well initially. But there was, I guess, this starting of a bubble inside me of thinking, well, why didn't I get told about it? And then by 19, told to have children quite early on. And the operations just came in thick and fast, one after the other.
You were told to have children?
Yeah, so my fertility was seen as dropping really quickly.
Right, okay, so they're saying
So there was two things. There was one was your fertility looks like it's going to drop, and I think if you want children, you've probably got about 4 years. And also I was told by other medical professions, well, you know, having children will cure endometriosis. So I was like, right, okay, let's make a decision. So we did that, and I was really lucky. It took a while, but I was really lucky to fall pregnant. And I did go on to have 2 children, but it was very much in between all of these surgeries that I was having. And by the time I got to 30, I was exhausted, trying to raise these 2 kids and have endometriosis and hold down a career, that I was like, okay, this has got to have some let up. I was like 18 operations in and tired. So I waited a few years. I was kind of, I suppose, conscious to think about what I was going to do. And then I got to 33 and had an MRI scan, actually. It was the first time I'd ever had an MRI. And we sat there with the consultant, and he just said, your uterus is touching your spine. You are at risk of 3 cancers. Wow. And you're probably, it's going to be quite risky to, you know, try and save your bowel. What do you want to do? And I was like, let's get it all out. And I thought that would be great. I thought having a hysterectomy would be amazing. So we went through that with very little knowledge told to me about what would happen after. I thought my endometriosis would be cured. I thought that was it. I was going to live this amazing Pinterest lifestyle. And I quickly came crashing down afterwards. And that sent me into a mental spiral. I didn't know what was happening with my body. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I just didn't know what was going on physically and mentally. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought, you know, why am I physically feeling this new pain when the pain of endometriosis had gone and adenomyosis had gone? Why am I getting a dry vagina? What is that about?
Yeah.
You know, and I was diagnosed mentally ill. And it was not until 2 years after my surgery that my therapist sat me down and he said, I think this is your surgical menopause. And I was like, what?
Oh my God.
Like, what? What is that? And he said, well, I think, you know, the hormones have all gone out of your body, you don't have any estrogen. It's called surgical menopause. And that was 2 years after my surgery.
And they told you nothing?
No.
And how many years ago was this?
So my surgery was 7 years ago now. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was him that brought it up?
It was
The
him that brought it
therapist
up. Yeah. And, you know, this near-retired guy, nothing to do with women's health, really, other than mental health. And at that point, I thought, oh my God, that gives me power. I suddenly just felt like this rush of emotion, lots of different emotions, but mainly power to think, okay, it's not me. I'm not losing my mind. I'm not a bad person. There is something going on that possibly I can control and learn about. And then I went onto Google and there was nothing but older ladies and in their 70s having hysterectomies. And I thought, that's not me. I'm in my 30s. I'm still quite hot.
Yeah.
And, you know, I still want to go clubbing. And I've got kids to raise, and how do I do this? And I think that then started to stir quite a lot of anger. Quite a lot of anger of why did I just get given that leaflet how to poo and a box of medication. There was a really low dose of HRT, which is what I walked out of hospital with. Never to have a review, never to be actually told this is hormone replacement therapy. These are other things you need to do. These are the symptoms. And I think that just stirred in me to go, okay, I need to do something about me. I need to be empowered to try and find out how I, you know, help heal myself. And in me, a lot of that came from trying to help others and share my experience. And that led on to the social media and then speaking and then the book. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because 7 years on, I still have women in my DMs coming out of their surgeries and not having a clue.
Yeah, wow. And how many other women are there out there, you know? And we've seen your socials. Your socials are absolutely brilliant. They're incredible. You use a lot of humour around what it is that you've been through. And what do you think are like the main reasons for that? I mean, I guess you've kind of just explained it a bit, but more in your own words.
Humour for me is joy. And joy is so important, I think, when you're trying to heal. Dr. Jean, my therapist, I think first connected the dots with joy for me. He said you need to really reduce your stress, because I was experiencing anxiety and panic attacks, and he said, you know, the one thing that will help reduce your stress is by doing something that you love. And also humour is a way that I think we just try to cope.
Yeah.
It's a great coping mechanism. We always say, we don't laugh, we will cry. And there's times when I'm blubbering on social media and really raw and real too. But it's my way of expressing, and also just to say to other people that it's okay. We can still be in the dark moments, but we can still find a little bit of the fun within it and try and seek it out. And trying to get a message out there to people that don't necessarily want to go and read the doctor's information, or maybe don't see themselves in menopause. I didn't see myself in menopause. That was the important thing. To go, oh, hang on a minute, this person is dancing in leopard print in her kitchen. That looks funny. But, oh, she's also talking about this. And, oh my God, I have that. And I have that. And I have that. And then they're suddenly realising that they're maybe in a position the same as me. But that connection has been made because they've had a laugh first.
Yeah.
Love that. Do you ever get any backlash from the...
Yes.
Really?
Yes, all
well,
the time.
I'm not surprised, because people are seeing things filtered by their own lens, aren't they? So.
Yeah, and that's okay. Everyone, you know, social media is a ride in itself, right? God.
What angle does the backlash come from? Why do you get backlash about
I
that?
get backlash from women experiencing menopause asking me whether I'm taking the mick. That's usually followed up by, you're too young. What do you know? Why are you kind of making this, trying to, you know, take the mick out of this? You know, this is really serious. And that comes from a place of them being in a place where they're not ready to experience that joy or experience that humour, and that's okay. You know, and that's okay. And I'm, you know, very grateful for those comments, because they always open up a conversation, and that's really important. But you know, and also sometimes in the community itself, you know, I can be seen as maybe not knowing my stuff, or not being so serious, or being taken as seriously to hold space and to talk about this subject because of the way I conduct myself online. And it's taken me a little while to be okay with that, to go, oh, okay. And I've tried to be the serious person and fit into spaces, and I just can't do it. I have to be me, and you know,
love that.
I just think there's space for all of us, and people will gravitate to the people that they need to hear the message from.
I think that's so true, and because I don't know from kind of relating some of my experience to you know, to what you put out there, is wanting to bring everyone in. That's what I want to do, right, within the menopause space. So I want to bring everyone in, and for everyone to hold space for everyone, right? So whether it, you know, you're from kind of marginalised backgrounds, or you're going through menopause early, but the reality is we can't speak to everyone. We use our experiences, and those people that are going through that relate to that. But somebody that's going through it in their 20s, or you know, much younger, is not going to relate specifically to my content, and that's why we need these different voices, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really great. There's, you know, we can talk about menopause specifically in the terms of, you know, you've got your perimenopause, you have medical and surgical, you've got transmenopause, you've got premature ovarian insufficiency, all being experienced by all different ages, and all connected with different life moments that are happening around those that also connect different communities. So, you know, medical or surgical can be relating to cancer. So that then brings a whole different experience to what somebody is ready to take on. And they might not be wanting to sit there and listen to somebody who is in their 50s talking about it, who is, you know, talking about midlife and the things that are happening around midlife and them raising all their teenagers going off to university or them caring for their parents, because they're sat 25 years old, you know, now infertile, having to deal with cancer and have just had, you know, harrowing surgery. So there's definitely space for everyone. And I think it's just about making sure that we allow that, and we allow that, whether that's online or in event space and in workplaces and schools, to really open up the conversations.
Yeah.
Love that.
And you can only be, like, by being you. I saw something the other day that said, be you so that those looking for you can find you. And I thought, isn't that beautiful?
Lovely.
Like, just to be who you are.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to ask you was, because your experience, I mean, it sounds harrowing. It sounds like you've been through an awful lot. How has that kind of shaped you in terms of, like, your resilience? Are there things that you look back on and you think, you know, that was just horrendous, but it's given me this?
Yeah, definitely. So, and this is a real kind of recent revelation for me, because a lot of people say, oh my God, you're so resilient. And that's really in just, you know, what I share here today. And obviously we all have stuff that goes on in life that also is impactful, that happens to our family and our friends. And I did get to a point recently where I was like, people are saying I'm so resilient, I don't understand, where do I get that from? And I was starting to really question myself and thinking, is it that I get quite numb to stuff? And is it a negative thing that I just can keep going? And it's like, because it definitely feels like it affects me, but just to keep bouncing back. And then I did some sort of self-work, I suppose, and I looked back over everything that I'd been through right from being really young, of those times when you feel, you know, either you were bullied or you weren't confident, and I thought, okay, what made me in those moments feel okay? And I talked about joy earlier, and I realised that even in the experiences that I'd had, something inside me had still gone and kind of found the joy within it. So, for an example, when my daughter was born, she was 25 weeks, we were 300 miles from home in Liverpool. You know, it was a life or death situation, and it was really, really traumatic. It was traumatic for her and it was traumatic for us. But I don't look on that with that trauma. I'm not saying it's not there inside me, because we definitely hold some, but I look at that time and I found the joy in that moment. I found connections with other parents. I fell in love with the city that we were forced to live in for 6 weeks. You know, we lived in a hospital for 6 weeks until she was allowed to be transferred. I had to make a home where that was, in the ICU. So it was always about finding something. And then I realised that while she was in there, I wrote a diary for her. It was the only time I'd written a diary. I didn't do one as a teenager. And I wrote this diary, and that was my way of, again, bringing joy, of sharing what was going on, the highs and lows, writing. I illustrated in it, I coloured it in, we got the photographs. Back in the days, you printed photographs, you had to go to Boots. I mean, thank God it wasn't even
Boots in the photograph department. Printing those
I
photos.
made friends with the girls in the because we would go back and they'd be like, oh my God, how's that baby? You know, like, and I found that joy in that moment, and that's just one example. And it was the same with, I guess, going back to your humour question, of when I think about my surgeries, or I think about my biggest surgery, again, a traumatic experience to go through, lots going on in my mind. But, you know, the things that I pull out is how hot my anaesthetist was, and, you know, how good the food was at the hospital, and, you know, actually how everybody rallied round me to help me at that time, and how brilliant my husband was, and, you know, how gorgeous the kids were at that time, and just trying to find those moments of joy that allow you to refill your cup to then bounce back and go again. And I think that's really, really important, is to just try and seek out the little bit of magic, even however difficult it is.
Love that.
I do. So like the silver linings, people call them glimmers now, don't they? But the little glimmers.
It is so true.
I love that word, glimmer. I just love that. Those little glimmers of happiness.
Yeah. And we do it all the time when, you know, how often do we go to a funeral? And it's so sad, but we still sit and the eulogy's done, and, you know, if it's written in a certain way, we're laughing.
Yeah.
Or we get to the wake and we decide and we have, you know, the food together and we have a drink together and we're sharing stories. And suddenly that sad event, and we're all still sad and we all still miss that person and we're going to continue to, but it gives that glimmer
Yeah.
that actually there's that joy within that moment, and it's about doing that in every difficult part that you are in for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it. So let's get on to menopause myths, because we've seen that you have put some wonderful content up about many. I mean, let's put it over to you. What is the one menopause myth that you would like to bust?
If you can put it down to one.
Yeah, if you can put it down to one.
Oh my goodness,
pick your
favourite. My favourite menopause myth is that women experience menopause between the age of 45 and 52. Bish bash bosh, that would be my top one.
Yeah.
Because that narrows down everybody's thinking and everybody's viewpoint of what menopause is, that it is just a midlife experience. So yeah, that's why I just continue to try and say, you know, it is so far spread from early teens to over 60s, you know, and symptoms can spread as far as that and beyond. Actually, women in their 80s still experiencing menopausal symptoms.
Yeah.
So, or postmenopausal symptoms, I should say. But that statistic, that box that we and media continue to drive back to, as helpful as it is and as helpful as statistics can be, I always say the statistics are far greater than what gets shared.
Yeah.
So whenever I do a talk or wherever I'm anywhere in person, I always say I'm going to share some statistics with you, but I want you to remember that these are far greater. So when we talk about 1 billion women being in menopause next year, are we just looking at an age category? Yes, we are. We're not looking at all the hysterectomies that will be done across the world,
Gosh,
all the cancer treatment that will be done across the world, all the girls that will have POI, you know, when the trans community, we're just not looking at that. So that's the one myth that, if I could choose one,
it would be that one. I think that's a great myth to
Yeah.
bust. Because it's unbelievably frustrating, and would make such a difference, wouldn't it, to people getting help earlier? If they knew about it, and if actually the medical professionals had it on their radar, it would be huge. So you've written a book.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about it?
I will. So the reason that I wrote this beaut here, my menopause, my journal, my rules. I'd never really thought, oh, I'm going to write a book. It wasn't on my radar. What I started to do is, as I started to try different things that was helping my own kind of getting through my symptoms, what worked, what didn't, I first started with journaling. Journaling was a massive game changer for me. I was introduced to bullet journaling really by accident, to be honest. And that, at the beginning, helped me strategise, get out of bed, walk the dog, get the kids to school, because that's where I was at that time. It was like minimal capacity to do very much. Then as I kind of progressed on, ideas started to come in, and I would go and explore different things like sound healing and mindfulness and Reiki and spin classes, which I will never do again, by the way. I did one.
No joy in there, no joy.
Sea lion clapping, that is all I am going to say. The Bridget Jones moment. But I did explore all these different things, because I thought, okay, while I'm trying to sort out HRT, because that was a ride, and I just started to kind of make notes and journal myself about how did that make me feel, and would I do it again, and track things that were changing. So that was kind of the journaling point. And then while I was still trying to learn about this surgical menopause, as I said before, there was really nothing on Google. There was really not much happening on social media at that time. There was no real books out on the shelves that were not medical. So this was pre-Davina's book and Maria Frostrett's book, and all kind of the celeb books that we'd had. And I was like, there's nothing that's shouting to me. And the medical jargon was quite dry and didn't really light me up to read it. And I thought, okay, there needs to be something here for me. For what would I want to read? So I kind of connected the two things together and going, right, what can I create? Maybe it could be a book. So that's how I started. And I thought, right, what do I want it to be? I'll share about my own experience. I was comfortable with doing that. I'd already been journaling stuff out, so I kind of had a lot of that. And it was a really cathartic thing to do, to really delve in, to focus on things like, how did I feel around my body? How did I feel around sex and self-pleasure and all of these things that were not really existent for me before my hysterectomy because of endo, that after now I wanted to kind of learn and reconnect with. So there was research involved. And then I wanted to talk to other people. I'd connected to people online and I thought, this is amazing. I'm not the only one. There's girls going through this really young. There's women going through it a lot older. What if I captured these little nuggets of their stories or their words of wisdom to kind of help it feel like anyone could read this book? Doesn't matter what type of menopause you're experiencing, you can pick it up and go, oh, I relate to and connect to that person. So that was that side. And then the journaling was just like a no-brainer for me, because I felt like as I was writing it, there was more stuff starting to come out. And I thought, where's the action? We're getting the information, which can feel really overwhelming. We've got the connection with people that might feel like us, but what about the sense of self to then take the action? Where's that empowerment come from?
Yeah.
And because I found journaling so cathartic, I thought, let's put some prompts in there. Let's get the reader really thinking. Let's allow them to make it their own and make their own rules. And, you know, when the HRT stuff isn't quite available, or, you know, they're only on a limited budget, like, how do they still feel empowered, that they have control, that they can make their own rules around whatever menopause they're experiencing? So, yeah, just these little nuggets of journaling space, prompted stuff, going right through mind, body and soul. And that was, it was to fill a gap, really. And hopefully it's doing that.
Yeah, so that sounds really, I guess, different to those standard clinical menopause books that you would get on the shelf. I mean, this almost sounds like something that, you know, I don't think I'm there with menopause yet, but I want to buy it, I want to put it in, you know, like I want to understand it.
Yeah.
Especially the part where you said about making it, you know, affordable for those with the lower budgets. I think that's so important, like inclusive well-being for everyone, right?
Yeah, because, you know, a lot of the therapies that are shared online, a lot of the things that happen, you know, they're expensive. And, you know, we know there's a lot of celebrities out there talking about menopause, which is fantastic, but they've got very different lifestyles to what I had. You know, I was literally living in my overdraft. You know, every spare money I had is going on the kids' endless clubs. You know, minimal energy to do stuff. So it was about, how can I bring that in and just make it for a normal person to read, and just go, actually, you can still have control over your body, you can still reconnect to yourself, but make it funny as well. You know, it's got some dark moments in there that I share for sure, but make it funny. I mean, there's ways that you can bump someone off with a banana. There's 54, by the way, because I fantasized about that. Like, you know, how many times can I, you know, potentially kill my husband in moments? I haven't, just to put that out there.
He's fine.
He's still with us.
If he slips on a banana, just, you know.
But bananas are also really good for potassium, so you can eat it first and then use the skin.
No wastage.
No wastage. But, you know, and I wanted it to feel like, you know, somebody could throw it at a wall if they wanted to. There's pages in there that you can rip out and burn. And you can write all of the things that, because honestly, we have those thoughts that if the government got into our brains, we'd be locked up. And that's okay. And it's saying, we don't have to just be these perfect people. We can write that stuff out. We can get it out of our systems. And you know what? We can rip it out and burn it, and we can then move on.
Watch me burn and let me go.
Yeah. And it's
baby.
And it's really, and it's fun to do. And what I really love about this as well, which is, I didn't intentionally think of, but a lot of people have then bought it and said to me, is like, I can't wait to hand this down to somebody in my family. And you know, I always said about changing that generational stigma, you know, closing that gap. I felt like, you know, I was this millennial, my mum didn't talk about menopause, my grandma didn't talk about menopause, my kids are ready to kind of talk about most things, you know, the next generation, selling farts in jars and all that stuff, like they're out there.
They are totally.
They are totally out there. So I'm like, oh my God, we're just like these people in the middle, so we've got to close that gap. And I found that such a insightful moment when somebody was like, I can't wait to write this, and then when I'm ready, pass it on to my daughter or my niece or whoever to go, this is how it was for me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, get ready,
Yeah.
but be informed, but I can share my experience in a different way than if you're not so good at sitting down and talking about it.
Yeah.
Love that.
I think that's so like important what you said there, just relating to the less of a budget, the not necessarily, you know, not having a celebrity lifestyle, we need, like we've mentioned earlier, different stories that fit different people at different places in their life.
Yeah.
And that has been and is missing, I think, has been missing, hasn't it? Of that, what you can take control of, you can take control of, without having to have loads of money to be able to get access to that support.
Yeah.
Because that feels even more isolating, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you are in these situations where you are dependent on NHS appointments and NHS support and waiting lists, and how long, when does that end? So having something that's like in your toolbox of, okay, I'm getting my book out, I'm really angry. You know, it must be frustrating to be on social media and see people being able to access the right help and the right support, and you feel like you're stuck. I'm here in the middle.
Yeah.
I've been having a bit of paper where I'm just really angry about that. And Victoria talks about it, so I can say that too.
Yeah, and it's so true. And people on my comments like, oh, just, you know, they're sharing private doctors, or just go and see this person, or, you know, don't wait for the NHS, you go private. Yeah, £250 for a 10-minute appointment. Like, not everyone can do that.
No.
Do you know what? And we spoke about this on one of our episodes, one of our other episodes, sorry. And like, you know, if you do have that extra money, it is great. But actually, like, we have to meet people where they are, not everyone. And that's one thing that I've learned in the last couple of years in the whole wellbeing journey is you got to meet people where they are. Like, not everyone can just go. But I feel like we're more in this world now where we are surrounded by people that are like, yeah, just come to my head, here's £1,000. Yeah, pop it in the account. Oh yeah, go and see that person. Yeah, go to therapy. My therapist, yeah, £3,000 a pop. Like, what?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. And it's and we're also then faced with, you know, how people look on social media because they can afford all the best things, or, you know, they're like, well, you should take this collagen and it's, you know, £200 a month, and, you know, and I talk about that stuff in there. I talk about supplements and I talk about the things that we can do, and some of it does cost money, but I always say go for whatever your budget is. But the important thing is that there is also tools in there that are free. There are also ways to help you feel empowered, so that, do you know what, if you've got a fight on your hands with the NHS, because we know at the moment it's difficult to get an appointment, it's difficult to be heard, you know, women are getting turned away, being told they're too young, or, you know, not being given support. So there's a whole section in there around, this is how you advocate for free, no need to go to a private, we have an NHS service, so this is how you get heard. And this is what you can do. And hopefully that then inspires women to go, okay, I'll do it. And I love it. I get it in my DMs and I'm like, you know, somebody will say, I went to the doctors today and I took the list that you said and I took my book with me and I didn't take any nonsense. And, you know, and I was like, right, okay. And they listened and I felt really great. And I was like, that is you. That is you. And it didn't cost anything other than, you know, purchasing the book or seeing a reel of mine, which is free anyway. So it's brilliant. Like, let's give people power to do the stuff, and then when they're in a better place, then they can really think about, if they do have spare money, where they spend it sensibly. Because who knows, we could be buying menopause chocolate for £5. Enough said about that. Or we could be, you know, spending £300-400 on some therapy that's, you know, supposed to be magic, and it's not quite so.
When actually the magic is inside us sometimes.
It is, those glimmers.
Those little glimmers. So What do you hope that this book will do in terms of changing the conversation around menopause?
I think hopefully it goes back to what I said before, that it enables people to feel a connection and see themselves, that they're not alone. I think that's one of the first things. And to also learn from other experiences. And I say that right at the beginning of the book, is I say, you know, don't just read the sections that are relevant for you. Read it front to back, because you will learn so much about other women, so much about womanhood, so much about, you know, different people experiencing this thing called menopause. But also that it isn't all doom and gloom. I think that's really important, that it's a huge shift, and sometimes it can come with traumatic events, and we know it comes with mental health issues as well. But actually there is this element afterwards as well, that once you have kind of tackled your body and your mind, that there's also this beautiful soul part of you, that what lights you up. Okay, what's next? What happens now? My path may be different to what I thought, or now I'm in this new phase of my life in my 50s, but oh, that's exciting. Yeah. And then there's the whole section of feeling empowered and how you take that part too. So I feel like, you know, my hope is that it reaches the people that it needs to reach, and that will resonate with it. And that by the end of it, that they'll feel empowered, that they're okay, and that, you know, that they're okay to move on to this next chapter and feel a bit more equipped.
I think it's going to be all right.
Yeah. It's going to be okay, yeah.
It's wonderful. And that, kind of on that note, for anyone that, you know, that's listening, whether they're younger going through menopause, or they think they might be going through menopause, or related to your experience today, what kind of message would you like to give them?
Such a big question, isn't it? I always say, you know your body best, and you know yourself best. Do not underestimate being really connected with that, in the good, the bad, and the ugly. And find a community that you can just kind of bob along with. So, you know, be curious about asking some questions, be curious to reach out to people online, to follow, and so that you don't feel so alone. I think that's one of the biggest things, is that we can feel like we're alone, and we're definitely not. We're definitely not. We know that. Perimenopause, we know the statistics are out there. For those experiencing menopause younger, you know, they're definitely not alone. There's all manner of girls and women experiencing this. So be curious to kind of be a little bit bold, if you can, to reach out with a message and just make a connection.
Yeah, nice.
But always go back to sense of self. And, you know, when things feel a bit messy, I talk a lot about finding your fierce in the mess. My fierce is my joy, you know, finding that when things get messy. But finding what lights you up and keeps you just as close as it can be in that moment to who you are. And know that it is going to be okay. You'll be okay. You're going to be a queen.
You're going to be a queen. You already are a
You
queen.
already
Victoria,
are.
if someone was listening to this podcast and thought, I need to connect with this woman, I feel some relation, how can they contact you?
Well, if they're Chris Hemsworth, they can have my mobile number. Thank you very much.
I feel like Chris, he could relate.
He could be listening to this, to be honest.
You never know.
You never know. I know. I'm not sure Mr. Ginge would be very happy. They can contact me through my website, so GingeUnhinged.com. I am on Instagram and I am also on TikTok. So I do say my DMs are open, and I will try and get back to people as and when I can. It's not always easy.
Oh God, no.
But yeah, you know, come and find me and for a chat.
And how do we get your book? How can people get your book?
Yeah, so my book is available on GingeUnhinged.com at the moment. So yeah.
Amazing. Go get the book.
Go get the book.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to another episode of Hormones on the Blink. And if you do have any questions, as always, you can hit us up on
www.hormonesontheblink.co.uk.
Yes, I think we've got a podcast one.
Oh yes, and we've got a podcast email address,
We
which
have
is
got a podcast. Podcast at hormonesontheblink.com.
.com.
.com.
Is it?
It's .com.